So, do you feel stuck on a certain path of life, or maybe fear is getting in your way of following your dreams? Or maybe, like me, you went to college and you went the normal path, and then you decided several years down the road that that wasn't really where your passion was, but you felt stuck and you felt guilty because you went to college all those years and you weren't sure which direction you needed to go. So my guest today, she has been there as well, but she decided to travel the less traveled path at a much earlier age than I did. So today she's going to share with us a little bit of her story. I'd like for you to meet a good personal friend of mine. Her name is Connie. She's also known as C.E. White. She's author of 3 books, a business entrepreneur, and an artist, as well as having done numerous other things throughout her life. So, hi, Connie. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, guys.
So, I've actually known Connie for about 20 years now. I first met her, she was my boss. And somehow, through the grace of God, we've remained friends all these years. And she has just been such a great gift from God for me and an inspiration throughout all these years. So, as I said before, we're just going to touch a little bit on her story. So Connie was probably one of the first and smartest people I knew who didn't go to college and was okay with that. As a naive 20-year-old, just blew my mind. So she's going to talk with us about that just a little bit. So just real quick today, Connie, just share with us, because you've talked about, she wrote a post for me on my website. So be sure to check out the link in the show notes for more inspiration and encouragement from her story. And you touched in the post that you wrote for me how you've had countless jobs. So, just for fun to get us started, what would you say has been one of your craziest or most unique job experiences?
Well, I have had a lot of interesting ones. I think that one of the things I loved about changing jobs so much, because I didn't feel tied to a certain career, was that I got to work with so many different people. Some colorful characters and some people that taught me things that I wouldn't have otherwise learned, and jobs and things that I wouldn't have otherwise learned. But some of the craziest experiences are not necessarily about the work itself, but about things that happen with those people. So that's one of the stories I want to talk about. I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
I worked for a caterer, and she worked out of her house, and her husband also worked out of her house. He was an insurance salesman. And so I was the office assistant. I helped cater events. I helped in the kitchen. I did kind of a lot of things. I'm almost like a personal assistant kind of thing for them. One day, I call this day the series of unfortunate events. She got a phone call that she had been a victim of identity theft, and one of her bank accounts had been completely cleared out. So she was kind of in freak out mode, which is understandable, and trying to get me to help her figure out what to do and all this stuff, and phone calls to this guy and that guy and all that stuff. So while she's on the phone with one of those, her husband comes in and says, "Hey, can you come help me with something?" Because he also had like all these side projects he would do. And he was taking one of his cars that he was fixing up to the shop, but he needed help to get it on the trailer because it wouldn't run. So he had to roll it down the driveway into the trailer. And he needed me to hold the brake on the other car to make sure the front car didn't slide forward while he was rolling the other one into the trailer. So I said, okay, so she's on the phone. I go down there with him to help. So I get in the truck that he's got the trailer hooked up to, and I hold the brake down, and he rolls his little sports car into the trailer. And I think, done. Okay, cool. I wave at him. He's still in the car, and I'm going back up the hill, and he starts hollering. And so I turn around, and he's banging on the window of the car. He's stuck in the car because now that it's on the trailer, he can't open the door. And it's the middle of summer, so it's like 90 degrees outside, and he is not a small person nor a young person. So this is not a great situation for him to be stuck in a hot car. So he can't start the car to roll the power window down because it's dead. So he says, "I think I could roll the window down if we can get the battery charged, but I can't pull the car up to use jumper cables because their driveway has drop-offs on both sides." Oh, so he says, "In the basement, I have a charger, a car charger, jumper. It's a thing that you can, portable. So their basement is huge and full. So I have to find this thing that I have no idea what it looks like. I'm digging around their basement trying to find it. Finally found it, pull it out there, but it one that requires to be plugged in. And this was not close to their house. So then I had to hunt out 2 giant extension cords to try and reach far enough out there. In the meantime, my phone is ringing off the hook because my catering boss is still like really stressed out about her situation and trying to figure out where I went while she was on the phone and why I'm not in the office helping her with this thing. And I'm ignoring her because I am saving her husband's life at the moment. So I finally get extension cords out there and get them plugged in, and I get the car charger hooked up and everything. Anyway, so we get that worked out finally. He climbs out the car window. Phew, okay, that's good. So in the meantime, my boss had paid a bill with the account that had now been cleared out that morning by check. So she called the place she had gone that morning and said, hey, that check's not going to clear because my account was cleared out. So they said, as long as you bring me another payment method by this afternoon, it won't be a problem. So, but she has to go to the bank and the whatever and try to deal with all that. So she asks me to go pay that bill for her. She gives me a check from a different account. So say, okay, she leaves, her husband's gone now with the car. I'm the only one at the house. I get in my car to go try to pay that bill and my car won't start.
Oh no.
And there's nobody there now. So if I try to figure that out first, I wasn't going to make it to the place to pay her bill before they closed. So I just took one of her catering vans without asking. I just was like, well, this is my option. So, and on the way back, I bought a battery for my car, having no idea how to change a car battery. And so then I got that taken care of. I got back to the house and I figured out how to change a car battery by myself. And I'm in the driveway doing that. And a cop pulls up in her driveway and he was coming to try and take a police report about her identity theft. But of course, I was the only one there. So he was kind of like, who are you? And what are you doing in the driveway? And so it was, just kind of a comical situation. Anyway, so that was a series of unfortunate events day. That was kind of just looking back, a comical, comedy of errors. So.
Wow. Crazy. And of course, it's just like Connie, as many years as I've known her, instead of crying, which I probably would have broke down and cried and probably called Connie, she was like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. So that's perfect. So, all right. Well, I know Connie probably has tons of other stories, but I also want to just encourage you if you're feeling stuck in whatever kind of change that you're trying to think. So thanks for sharing that story, giving us a little laughter today. So one thing I've always admired about Connie is that she has never been afraid to go left when everybody else was going right. So if somebody was in the situation where they're trying to figure out which path they want to do in life and they're just feeling stuck, is there one piece of advice that you could give them? What would you tell them to do?
I would say it's a multifaceted piece of advice. The first thing I would say is don't let fear make your decisions. Fear is a really bad decision maker. I understand that there are real world things that it can, don't touch the oven and don't walk out in front of cars. Obviously, that kind of fear is good. But most of the fear that we allow to make our decisions for us is not the good kind of fear that's actually going to keep us from harm. It's the kind of fear that is keeping us from moving forward. So, and I think one of the things that has kept me from being afraid of making those kinds of decisions is it really is that looking at the decisions that the Lord had people made in the Bible, we're often telling them to go left when everybody else was going right. You had Noah build the ark when nobody had ever seen rain, and he got made fun of for 50 years. And there are innumerable stories of where God said, no, I don't want you to do what everybody else is doing. I want you to do this thing that I've called you to. And I have always felt like I would be safest and happiest following his route, even when it doesn't make sense to the rest of the world. And I think that's just true. If you're a Christian, there's no way that you can't believe that. But I would also say along with that, accept that failure is going to be a part of your journey, and don't be afraid of it. Because if you're stepping out into something that is off the beaten path, you probably will have failure experiences. And there's a couple of quotes that I really like. One is, "Only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly," by Robert F. Kennedy. I think that's true. I think that if you are always following the path that everybody else follows, you're not going to achieve anything different than what anybody else has already achieved. So I think that you have to be willing to step out beyond the safety net of conventional wisdom and common sense if you want to do anything that is outside of that. Another one that I love is, "The master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried," by Stephen McCrane. And I think that we think people have automatic success, or they're not scared when they do that stuff, or but it's not true. People who have excelled have failed, just like I think Thomas Edison says, "I didn't fail, I tried 1,000 ways that didn't work," or something to that effect. That's not word for word. And you have to be willing also to change course. There's been a lot of times where I went a direction, and maybe that direction was great for that time, but I had to be willing to change direction again. And I hear that from a lot of people who chase their dreams or their passions, that they realize that changes over time, and they have to be willing to step out into the new thing, even if they had a successful run with the first thing, that that makes sense to other people. They're like, "You did this thing and it worked. Why would you shift now?" But God doesn't necessarily have us on one path for our lives. It's okay to change. And I also want to say that I don't want anybody to think I have some special kind of bravery, in that I think my personality and nature kind of pushes me this direction anyway, to be I'm kind of a rebel. I don't take well to authority. I'm kind of so I think it's my nature to push out beyond the boundaries, because I don't like people to tell me what to do. So, but I don't think that's an excuse for people not to do it. I just think that I don't want to pretend like I'm super brave, because these are the things I have done don't encapsulate my fears. I have fears, and I have to face them in other ways. But if stepping outside of the conventionality is your fear, I'm not saying that you can't do it. I think you should do it. I think it's important, because, like I said, you're going to accomplish way more than you could on your own. And I think that's where we give God room to move. If we never step out on faith, how are we going to know God is working? Because we're living by our own common sense, by our own intelligence, by our own skills. We're only attempting the things that we feel comfortable and confident that we can do. We're never gonna see God work, because we're not giving him room to move. And he wants to do more than we can do. And it's only when we step out beyond what we can do that we can see him work that way. So
great advice as always. You reminded me, one of my favorite stories in the Bible is where Jonah basically resisted God, and he said, "No, I don't want to do that. That's not my plan." And God was like, yes, this is where we're going. And it took basically them throwing Jonah out into the ocean. If you've never read that story, I'll find the reference so you can look it up. And then he went to the city of Nineveh and told those people about God, and God worked beautiful, miraculous things through that. And I think just like she said, he can do so much more than we could ever imagine. And I do have the fear of reaching out of unconventionality. So I know that all of her wisdom always encourages me. But one thing that I read, I don't remember where I read it. I wish I could give credit, but it's stuck with me these past few years, is that God's plan is always option A. So even if it's not your if it's not your plan A and you think it's your plan B or C or D, God, he's always working, and his plan was there the whole time.
Yeah.
So in Jeremiah 29:11, God says, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you future and a hope." So just in closing, I hope you enjoyed this video and found encouragement from it. And be sure to check out Connie's post if you need more encouragement. And also be sure to hit subscribe and like for more encouragement. And this also helps people who need encouragement find it as well. So thank you guys for joining us. And thank you, Connie, for joining me.
Thanks for having me.